Hey guys.
Hey. All right. I hope this room is actually going to record. I did not test it out prior to this.
Thanks for doing this, dude.
Yeah, no problem.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's this part of the program is always really frustrating to me, both as a student and coaching students through it. It's just I don't know, too many things like shift and turn, and there's this expectation that you just perfectly understand, monolithic architecture. Oh, it is recording. Sweet. It's like you perfectly understand monolithic architecture off the bat, but that's just not the case. And I've seen so many students just make mistakes that are, of course, perfectly reasonable considering what you know so far. But it's just like you can't use live server to serve your client while your server is running on a different port. Like that's just no, that's not going to work. We can't. That's
Right.
It's too big of a conceptual error to. We can't just look past that and be like, oh, that's just a typical process. So I mean, that is just a typical learning process. But I think that this part of the curriculum is tricky, and the curriculum has changed, and it's definitely changed from when I was a student. So I think that there's an agreement on a need that there should be something like this. So I'm happy to do it. Again, I did it for the 11s, and it was pretty fun. Great learning opportunity for me as well. So should be a good time.
Awesome.
Okay, let me, how many folks we got 7 folks. I'm going to just give it a few more minutes, and it's also going to take me a second to log in on my thing. So this is Zoom. Okay, we've got 9 of us, including myself and Kheng, and then we've got 8 of you, which is about half the cohort. So that's good enough attendance. I'm satisfied. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So let's do this. If you have questions, just post them in the chat or just say them out loud. Actually, I prefer if you say it out loud because there's going to be a bit of jumping around. And it's going to be really interactive. So I apologize in advance when I'm going to be cold calling on people. But this will all make sense because I don't expect you to have the answers. I just expect you to give me a good guess. And what I found whenever I ask students to do that is 80% of the time they're usually right. And their intuition is good. So just give me your best guess. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Some of you are going to get harder questions than others, and I apologize, but there's just no getting around that, unfortunately. Okay, so let me pull up my lesson plan. Oh, wait, nine people is including me twice. Shoot, there's 8 of us, but that's fine. More people will join. So, oh yeah, another thing to note is, so let's talk about the goal of this session. The goal is not for you to become masters of, any of the topics we're going to talk about today. The goal is not even for you to remember that much about all the things we're going to talk about today. The goal is to just get a better understanding, and the more that you use these tools, the more that you get a taste of the documentation, the more you reference the documentation rather, the better it'll all start to come together. As I'm sure being halfway through the program now. So interrupt me with questions. We're gonna let this go wherever we go. We can spend how much of our time on tangents as we want, and yeah, it should be a fun time. So let me Zoom share screen. Share. All right. Can you all see my whiteboard or something like that?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to start with drawing a client-server architecture from our memory, or collectively. So let's just start with a black line. We'll call this the client side. We'll call this the server side. Okay. Start saying things. What goes on the page? And specifically, let's use the context of are you guys doing? No, you're still doing mini apps, right?
We're doing full stack starting this week.
Okay. Let's go with the full stack architecture, which is Express, Node, React, MongoDB, and using Webpack, which is not technically part of the stack, but using Webpack. All right, what goes on the page for client-server architecture?
What you just said.
Yeah, but like, one by one.
Express, Node on the server side.
So Express is a library for Node to do what?
Handle routes.
Yes, handle routes for the most part. So in other words, it would be a what? Express Node is what?
Entry point?
Hmm?
An entry point?
No, just even high level, just more high level. Just like when I talk about to somebody like, oh, I'm using, XYZ technology, like I'm using Node and Express for my backend.
Backend, yeah.
Right, but like, what's another way of saying I'm using Node and Express for my backend? I'm using Node and Express as my
dependencies.
No, it's so simple. Just yeah. what Alan said.
Server.
Yes, we are using.
Thank you, Alan.
We are using a Node server with Express as our library to make that simpler for us. So, I can't draw the Node.js symbol, but we'll just say we'll draw a box here. This will be our Node server. In parentheses, we'll put Express. Okay. Then what else do we need?
Mongo on the server.
On the server side, yep. So let's put MongoDB. Can't spell Mongo. Then what else?
React client on the client side?
Yep. So we have a client, which we know is a React client. Anything else?
I believe Mongoose.
Mongoose is our ORM.
Okay.
We can add that under here. That's fine. It's more like a bullet point under the Node server, which in fact, I will do the same thing for Express. Cool. Okay. Question for you all. So we know that React is our client-side code, but why does it sit on in our folders on our server side, on our computers when we're developing? How does it get over to the client side?
Babel.
Babel is part of it. Think about mini app number 4. Because Babel does what? Whoever said Babel, I'm gonna pick on you.
Babel translate ES6 into like ES5, I guess, or the older version.
Yep.
And so that it's readable for browsers that are not quite up to par with the new ES6.
Exactly. So in this particular sprint, we are using Babel the same way that we were using the Babel command line tool earlier for our mini apps like part 3 and as well as our React and Redux sprints. However, things are a little bit different now because we're using Babel through what tool? Charlene, do you have any guesses what I'm trying to refer to? All right, Alan, I'm going to pick on you, not Seer Alan, student Alan, RPT 13 Alan.
Can you repeat the question?
So we know that we need Babel to transpile our code.
Yep.
But unlike last time, we are not using the Babel command line tool. We are using something else. We're using it in a different way within another tool. What is that tool?
Webpack?
Yes, precisely. So there is Webpack. And I forgot who said it. It might have been Alicia. But, you know, Babel is a part of that. So, as I mentioned before, we have our React files.
Nice.
It's not my first time drawing that React symbol, I'll tell you that.
Like it.
So there we go. We've got our React JSX. And then Babel does what? Or Babel Webpack does what to those files?
Transpiles.
Yeah. It does one more thing.
Bundles?
Yes, transpiles and bundles. So in React goes, I'm not going to write transpile and bundle. You guys remember that. And then what comes out?
JavaScript.
Yes. Elaborate.
I'm not sure. Maybe make it too far. Sprint number 4.
Well, you use Webpack in part 4, right?
Yeah.
What came out of after you were using Webpack? What was the output of that?
Bundle.js.
What.js? Oh, bundle.js. Yes, precisely. So JavaScript, but specifically one JavaScript file that was more or less the, you know, all of our different files here bundled together. So out came our, whoa, it's too big. Out came our bundle.js. Okay, that's great and all. So we have our bundle.js. But that still doesn't really explain how does this get over to the client side. It's just a JavaScript file right now. How do we get all the code on the left to the right? Does anybody know? David, give me your best guess. How do we get our bundle.js and our other things over to the client side?
You put in the HTML?
Yes, precisely. So we have an index HTML file. Which we know includes a script tag of our bundle.js. and these two are packed together. But they still kind of have one more problem. Our index.html, their bundle.js. Usually, what's the folder we put them into? Usually, what do we call that? Or what did they call that in the last sprint?
Public?
Yeah, public or distribution. I like to use distribution, but let's put a big box around this. It's called public / dist. Okay, great. All of this makes sense. That being said, still didn't really answer my question, that's fine. I did that on purpose. How do we get this public dist folder over to the client? How do we get it to the user?
The user makes a request.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just said the user makes a request.
Yes, precisely. But even more simpler, what needs to happen in order for the user to be able to make a request in the first place? How do they establish a connection?
App.use?
So I'm not. Don't get too technical with this.
Oh.
Once again, high level. In fact, it's pretty similar to the thing that from before that I said before, and Alan gave you a hint from.
Express.
Even simpler. You're on the right track, though. What does Express do?
Serves the files.
Yes, precisely. Our server serves the files. Among a dozen other things. But yes, that's kind of the most important thing, is the server will send over this dist and deliver it to the client. So this is how the lovely HTML, CSS in the world, well, okay, no, there's some different ways to do it, but for the most part, in the world, there's some server somewhere that is sending code, whether it be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever, is delivered to the client. And that is how the user accesses the React client. So what we're going to do today is essentially figure out this in a little bit more depth. Okay. All right, I am going to just bear with me for a second. Stop sharing my screen. How long have we been at this? It's only been 15 minutes. Okay, I want to take a quick bio break. But we just started, so we'll save our bio breaks for later. Okay. So now we're going to shift gears a bit, and I am going to share my screen and write a little bit of code. And we're just going to pretend that, we're working on our, no, stop that. Working on getting our React set up, which I think we do to some degree have to do, though I think a certain amount is given to you. So I'm going to change this to JSX, or JavaScript React. And we're going to start typing out our React files. So, and we're going to do it together. So what are some boilerplate things we need to get our React code going?
Import.
Yes. What are we importing?
Import React and component.
Yep. Import React. I can do components. And who said that? Sorry.
Alan.
Alan. Okay. Can you tell me why we need to do that? Give me your best guess.
It's so that when we create components, it has because React is a library, and we need a pull from that library to create components to render or to create or render the virtual DOM.
Precisely. And we're going to touch more on that in a second. So she said import React. Is there anything else we have to import?
React DOM.
Oh, yep. React DOM. I think that's how it's done. I might have the code a little bit off there, but that's roughly right. Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm sorry. Repeat the name, whoever that was.
Alan.
Alan. Okay, got it. All right. So Sunny, what do we need to do next?
So our index.js.
JSX really, but just think of it as like this is where we want to build our parent component, right? Our highest level component, our app component.
Yeah, we can create our component with like our app component.
Okay, how do we do that?
It's I forget. It's
So anyone want to help them? How do you declare React component?
it's like a app
Yeah, there we go. Class app.
with extend React, right? Or
Yes.
extend React.component.
Yeah. And let's make this a smart component. We don't need to worry about a dumb componentry. And then there is two things here. Well, there can be two things here. You don't always need to have them. Let me pull up my cold call list. Alicia, do you know what are some things we can include within our React component that might be useful?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to picture what I just wrote a few hours ago. Super?
Yes. Which takes it's an important part of React.
Props.
Yeah. Props.
Thank you, props.
And then I feel like I've already called on Alan once, so I'm going to jump down to Brady, who I've also called on, but too bad. Brady. Props are, we got super props, but we can't just have super props on its own. It needs to be wrapped inside of something.
A constructor?
Yeah, the constructor. Which, I mean, which also takes the argument props. I'll give you guys that one. So there's a really interesting article, actually. I actually kind of want to find it right now. Can you guys see the, can you see my Google Chrome browser?
Yep.
Okay, you can. Cool. So I think it's Dan Abramov, who's he works for Facebook on React, and he's also I don't know, the closest thing to a JavaScript celebrity we have. Why do we write props? It's pretty cool, where he kind of breaks down a little bit about why we do this, understanding what the what's kind of the purpose, what's the rationale between super props, and it's related to binding and tying the props and making them accessible, all that stuff. You can jump into that more a little bit later if you want to read about it. I posted it in the chat, or I recommend that. I'm going to post a lot of links in the chat. I recommend that you all save them, and you probably don't have time to read through them all today, but good to save. Cool. So we got our constructor, we got props. Anything else we want to throw on our constructor?
A state if you have one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't always need state, but it's more often than not, especially for our higher level component, we'll need some state. We can just have it be an array. Cool. So that's one part of our component. There's another pretty critical part that we always need to include. Actually, 100% of the time, you need to include this part in our React component.
Render?
Yes, the render method. which has what inside of it?
One big fat div.
I love that terminology. That's great. Yeah, yes, but before that, we need one more thing before we can return our one big fat div, or before we can give our one.
Returning that div.
Yes, yeah, I kind of gave it away in the answer. I'm not very good, am I? Or return, and then something I like to do when I'm setting up projects is I always like to, I like to always have my div say React is working, so I know that it's working when I first set it up. Cool. So that's it for the most part in terms of declaring our div. But there is another thing. There's one kind of final step in sort of getting our React project started up.
You gotta render it with the React DOM.
Yes, precisely. And how do we do that? Speak to me. Tell me how it's done.
React DOM.render. Then you would put in the app.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe the second argument is document.getElement by ID. And then the ID is whatever is on your HTML file.
Right. Which a lot of times in this class we use app. Whoops. Cool. And yeah, and that'll do it. I don't know why it's not highlighting correctly, but that's okay. We don't need to obsess over that too much. Yes, and I'm gonna cold call on someone. Oh yeah, thank you, Alan. Or sorry, that wasn't Alan, that was King. Yes, there we go. That is an important part. You need the JSX syntax for it to work properly. Charlene, can you tell me why this is important that we do this React DOM.render?
So we are able to render this component in HTML file? Or?
Yeah, precisely. We're saying take this React element, find the div, or the whatever element, probably a div, with the idea of app, and attach all of this interesting React code on top of that div. What's something that's really interesting, and I think you all covered it in maybe part 3 of the mini apps, is that you can have both like regular HTML and React HTML or React JSX code on the page, which I didn't even know because they didn't do mini apps back in my day. That's pretty cool. In the real world, so I work for a marketing software company, and one big thing with marketing websites is forms. And what's interesting is some kind of marketing automation systems. So companies like Marketo, that's probably the most famous one. Some of those companies will have React forms that are appended on just regular HTML. So that's kind of one real world use case for that. Just a fun tidbit of information. Cool. So, okay. Another thing I wanted to just bring up really quickly is, this isn't super relevant, but way back in the day, React and React DOM were actually different. Were actually one package. It was one and the same. And then for some reasons here that I don't really want to get into, but you can definitely, another thing you can read about later is they put those up, and there were some interesting reasons for that. So if you're curious as to why we have to install 2 NPM packages, this will jump into that. And it's interesting. This is like way back in React. It's not even like version 1. Really, really early days of React. So cool stuff there. Okay. So that covers the React side. We know how our React code works. Let's jump into writing our Express server. So I'll start a new file. Command new. Yeah, there we go. And we'll call it, we'll do this JavaScript regular. This is our server code. All right, how the heck do we set up an Express server? Let's go with, I think we've gone around. So we're back up to Sunny. What do we do to set up an Express server?
We require it.
Yep.
Set a variable. There it comes.
Equals require. I think that's right. I'm going to pick on Kheng here, actually, because I want to see his answer. Why are we using requires here when we were using import over here on our JSX code? All right, he's unmuting. We'll give him a second.
Sorry about that. So require is node syntax, whereas import is ES6 syntax, and node doesn't support all ES6 features or syntax.
Yeah, exactly. Node plays by some different rules. Requires is, if you ever try to use require on the client, if you ever open up your Chrome browser, do require, it's just not going to work. You'll get an error. And the opposite, like you all have used fetch, right? The fetch method. Yeah, so fetch is something that'll work on your Chrome browser, will not work in Node. So there are some differences, and that's kind of one challenge we face as full stack JavaScript engineers, is that when we're learning the lines between what is server side JavaScript versus client side JavaScript, or it just doesn't come as naturally to us as if we went to a different boot camp and we learned Ruby on the back end or Python on the back end, it would be really easy because you literally change the language that you're writing coded in order to differentiate from front end and back end. So it's really easy. But that's another kind of big conceptual hurdle that we need to learn and figure out over time. So okay, that's great. Thank you, Sunny. Alicia, back to you. What do we need to do next?
Put an app constable to start, or variable to start express.
Yep. Equals
Express and then invoke it. Yes,
exactly. So let's see, Sunny. Alan, RPT 13, Alan. What's going on here? Can you break this down for me? Why are we?
So my guess is we're invoking it so that the app will now be able, or will act as the variable to call or create the server.
Yeah, more or less. I want you all, and I'm actually not 100% sure myself, but I'm pretty sure that this is, if you think back all the way to the first days where you're doing data structures, my guess is that whoever wrote Express decided to use functional instantiation. Who remembers what functional instantiation means? Think back to week 1. That's mean. I shouldn't ask you all to do that. It's so far ago. Such a long time ago. We all know what prototypical instantiation is. That's the the dot prototype stuff. What's functional instantiation? Kheng, I'm actually going to ask you again because I feel like this is kind of mean for me to ask them.
Yes, that is pretty mean to ask them. That was a long time ago. So functional instantiation is a function that you would call that will return to you an object with methods that you can call.
Right. So basically, you kind of want to think of it like this pattern. So, function, what is it? Var objects is just an object, and we'll say, express dot, is good framework equals true, or we say rather object dot is good framework equals 2, object dot is Python framework equals false, and then at the end you return object. And then the point of this being, I'm pretty sure that's what's happening inside of Express. There's an object with a number of properties that's being returned, and that's our instance of Express. It has all the methods that we need from it to run a server, more or less. So your answers from earlier was right. So this is, my guess, the idea of why they're doing this. And as you'll notice that I think the reason that whoever wrote Express made this decision was because there are some other methods that Express has that are useful, and they want you to, and you will eventually use those, express dot method will be useful for something else. So that's my guess as to what's going on and why that's going on. So there we go. That's an important. Yeah, I deleted that. That was on purpose. Okay. All right. So we called on Alicia. I called on Alan. Brady, what do we need to do next to get our Express server going?
We need to set up was it like something static, express? use
Yes.
static or something like that. I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, I actually don't remember either, so I'm going to cheat. File, new window. But not in a place where you all can see. So, oh no, it's going to zoom this one out too. Oh, there we go. Thank you, King. There we go. App.use express static. So Brady, can you give me your best guess as to what's going on this line?
Basically what we want to happen is, or we're rendering, I have no idea to be honest, but something to do with just like, you don't want it to dynamically change, is my obvious answer, or guess, with hence the word static.
Good guess. And I agree the terminology is a little bit tricky. That's not quite what I'm looking for, though.
It's telling you the path to the static files, and so you're pointing it in that direction.
Precisely. So we do need to make a slight adjustment to this. Hold on. It's not static. There we go. So path dot join actually, and in this case we have underscore dir name, and then let's pretend that we have that dist folder that we've already created that in our diagram. So dist. What's dir name? Anybody know?
Directory name? Just
Yeah.
the current directory of where your file's at?
Yep.
Is there a reason why you would use path.join versus concatenation?
Yeah, exactly. And if you ever try to concat it with just a plus sign, you'll see that you won't get the right path. You'll just get a string that's not valid. Path.join will essentially take care of that logic where it's like, okay, it's these two dots, well, that means go up a folder. So that's the purpose of path.join. Where does path come from?
Is it FS?
Similar.
Isn't it its own like package?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure it's one of those packages that just comes with Node. So path equals require path, which is why I was leaving a space up there for it. So we've got that. That's pretty important. Pretty good. And I'm gonna show you just official documentation for dir name, but it's exactly right. Whoever answered that question, it's just a variable that comes with that's in every single Node file that we use for the explicit purpose of figuring out the dir name and joining the path. I want to take a second to talk about path. And I have the documentation here. I'm gonna put it in the chat as well. But basically it provides utilities, right? So it's a little bit hard to read. And it's just making your life easier for kind of the DevOps side of things, where how do you serve? How do you set the app up to interact with each other? All really critical things. So you want to lead a little bit more into that. There's no documentation, but I don't want you to all just gloss over this. Be like, path is just path. I don't know what it is. You know what it is now, or at least a rough idea. So let's keep going. Who's next on my cold call list? We got Alan, Brady. Even though you answered, I'm going to call on you again. Okay, so we have what's next? What's another kind of important part of setting up our Express server? There's a number of things, so it's multiple choice.
Wait, am I answering?
Brady.
Yeah, Brady.
You.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I said we can start creating our pages, or our web pages.
Well, we've kind of done that already with React, but we need to set up a couple things in our Express server to make sure that we can send and receive data. So think back to the type of things you were doing in Shortly Express.
We need to set up our ports.
This is Alan. The SEIR Alan. Their Shortly Express was a little bit messed up, just so you know.
Yeah, it was, and I'm not asking him to make middleware or anything, but
Okay.
there were a couple lines, there were a couple lines of critical code that were needed to. For example, I'm gonna give you all a clue. Chunking. Do you guys remember that keyword chunking? What thoughts or who? Blah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Streams.
Yeah, exactly. But what does that refer to? Where does chunking and streams come in? What is that in the context of?
Data we're sending.
Yes, from where to where?
Server to client.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Right.
So I'll tell you now, if we don't have these couple lines of code I'm thinking about, we're gonna get gibberish in if we console log things in our request handlers. We're just gonna get gibberish unless we have these couple lines of code. And I'll give you a clue.
Body parser.
Body parser.
Yeah, there we go. Nice job, the both of you. So amp.use.
Does it come with it or not? Like, does Express now come with it, or?
I am pretty sure body parser is a separate module.
And okay.
You have to npm install it. In fact, let me check my.
Amogh, it used to come in Express, and Express 3 and before it did come with it. They got instructions using Express 3. In Express 4, which is what they were given, like the code, starting code, it does not. It is they split it off, just like React split off React DOM. In Express 4, body parser is no longer built into Express.
Thanks,
Alan. I appreciate that.
Your guys' instructions got a little bit mixed up. I know is exactly where Alicia's question is coming from, because they tell you just, hey, use Express, but you did have to go out and install it.
Yes. Thank you, Alan. That was great. That's good to know, and there's someone to back me up. Okay, so here we go. Server. Yeah. So we have body parser, and then there's I'll just give this to you. This one's kind of tricky. You call the JSON function, which I'll be honest, I don't have 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure what that does, but I'm pretty sure it's for saying, okay, we want to be able to read and send JSON data correctly. And then there's also one more thing, one more other body parser thing. Does anybody know what that is?
URL encoded?
Yes. Once again, not 100% sure what this is for, but typically I've seen that most, what was I going to say? Yeah, most applications, you'll need both of these to send and receive your data. And I think you can definitely jump into the body parser documentation, dive a little bit deeper, but just be careful not to get into a rabbit hole. Just know that both of these are important for sending data back and forth between our clients.
Are we supposed to put true or false, like in the URL encoded piece? I've read different things.
Yeah, I think usually you're right. I'm missing that part of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I think it's extended, and then it's either true or false.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, extended, true.
But then I was curious onto like what it actually does when you set it to true or false. If you know at the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't have the answer quite on top of my head. I feel like I read about this yesterday, but I could be wrong. Google your hearts away. Don't get stuck in a rabbit hole, but you can look that up on your own time. Not the most critical thing to understand, but good to know for sure. So, okay, nice. We've got almost everything before we start writing our routes. Let's see. I called on Brady. Charlene, what is one more thing that we need in order to kind of get started with setting up our Express? There's one pretty important method.
like any. So can we listen to the port? Or...
Yes, you got it. App.listen. And then, we'll just give it port 3000. And we'll give it a callback function. And we'll just say console log sing on port 3000. Boom. There we go. All right. Well, we've gotten it all. And I think I've called on everybody on the list. Oh, wait, no. See, whenever someone speaks, their name moves around, so it's hard to see. I think David is the next person who I haven't called on. All right, David, you get the easy one. What do we do next?
I get the easy one? There's something to do after this?
Oh. In the sense of like we're done setting up our kind of boilerplate code. Now how do we actually, get started with Express?
Oh, like you can have like an app request, you mean, or a post request?
Yeah. So let's just do a get. Or a post app dot. Actually, no, let's do a get. Let's set up an API endpoint. So API, let's say this is the GitHub one, right? So let's call it repos. What else happens here?
You can get a request and a response.
Yep. Res. The callback function. That's not me, is it? That noise? That's somebody else, right?
May have been me.
Okay, that's totally fine. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything in terms of like comments or questions. Cool. All right, so this is important. Let's go ahead and write this route, right? So we're getting our repos from our. Well, no, let's say repo search string, right? Let's make this a little bit more specific. We know specifically that our user is inputting like, Amogh K, which could be in my GitHub handle, and then how do we get access to that? Within our route.
Can you repeat that?
Huh?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So let's say that our user hits our endpoint of API / repo search string, and they send a string of the name, the repo that they want to search for on GitHub from the client. How do we get access to whatever value that they sent us?
Request.body.
Yes. So let's just do var. Let's do const stay in the S6. Search string is equal to request dot or rec dot body. It might be like rec dot body dot data. You can figure it out as you're coding. Cool. So let's say we have some magic or function that searches, and we've already written that somewhere else, and then we pass our search thing to it, and then let's pretend that this is already permissified, and we do const repos equals this, and we'll pretend that we're just going to ignore asynchronicity for the time being. Pretend that repos is the actual value that we want, that we get back from when we search GitHub. What do we do with this repos?
You send it back.
Yes, and how do we do that?
Res.end and then pass in repos.
Yep. I think you can do res.end and res.send interchangeably. I'll be honest, one of those things I'm not 100% sure on. But we can, there we go, search string, or not search string, sorry, repos. There we go. So our client should hopefully get a response. So that's all the important things in the Express side. This is going way faster than when I did it for RPT 11. Maybe I'm just that much better now. It's been about 2 months.
Does the body parser, does that give the requests a .body property? I think that's what I was thinking originally, but I don't know if that's actually right.
Kheng is nodding his head. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, so I know you don't want to think back about the authentication sprint, but the whole idea about middleware is that your request is coming in from the top. So think about processing through the server code from top to bottom. It's going to hit all the use lines, and it's going to pass in the rec and res. And as it parses through the body, which is what body parser does, right? It waits for all the chunks to come in, then it converts that string or whatever format it comes into JSON. Then it creates a .body property on the rec and assigns that new JSON value to that body rec.body. So it's the body parser that is adding that .body. Otherwise, without body parser, rec.body is non-existent. It's going to return undefined.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Sweet. All right. Okay, so we talked about directory name. We talked about, okay, now we're going to switch gears to Webpack. But before we do that, I want to take a quick bio break. I want to get some more soup. And we're let's just take a quick break. And yes, thank you, Ken. That was a great answer. So let's regroup at 7:10 or in 5 minutes from now. Does that sound good? Okay, great. We'll meet back here shortly.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, Charlene. How are you?
I'm good. Did you eat?
No. You know me, I'll eat chicken fingers later, chicken tenders.
I should eat. This is not too serious. I mean, this is amazing, by the way. It's not me just talking. I'm so jealous you guys got this. because Amogh is a great teacher, but not only that, it's like this is TA review, like more or less of like
Yeah.
especially before the full. You guys are on full stack week, right?
Yes.
Like this should make things click hard during the sprint.
Yeah, it's helping with the mental model we keep talking about of how things are working together.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm super glad he's doing this.
Sunny, did you get your MySQL shenanigans all worked out?
Yeah, I did. Thank you for your help again. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's everything's I think is working. Seems to be for the moment at least.
Hey, Charlene, did you get that awful storm yesterday? In Houston? Did you get that awful storm in Houston yesterday? Did y'all end up with a storm?
No.
Okay. We had like hail the size of my fist. People's windows in their cars were breaking out.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was real quick, like 5 minutes, but it did a lot of damage. And it's 80 degrees today, so there you go.
Are you guys in Texas? I heard Houston just now. Anytime I hear Houston, I have to celebrate.
Yeah, I'm from Houston and Charlene lives in Houston. I'm in San Antonio.
Oh, okay, very cool. Very jealous of you both getting to live in Houston.
We don't hear that often.
All right, looks like everybody's back. Okay, so just give me 1 second. I overheard you all talking. I feel kind of bad. I never did this for the 12s because I was like, when I did it for the 11s, I was like, I'm just helping out here. The 12s don't need this. Like, it's just not part of the curriculum. But now I'm like, oh, maybe I should have given it to them. But they had probably the highest pass rate of the TA of any cohort. So they can live without it. RPT 13, what is it called? What's this sprint called? Full stack. Is full stack one word or 2 words? Here we go, full stack review. So now I'm going to use I'll share my screen again. I'm going to use what is it? Where's the Webpack? I'm going to use the Webpack config from the one given to you, because the one that I typically use is a bit more complicated. There's a few more rules in there, but we're going to just do the same thing, break it down, and we'll go through it. So who do I finish? David was the last person I cold called last time, so we can start from the top. So this one we're not gonna break down piece by piece, I'm not gonna expect you to write it from scratch because you haven't really had to do this yet, and the day will come. But today that is not the challenge of writing this from writing this from scratch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call on each of you, and you're gonna give me your best guess as to what's going on. So Sunny, tell me what's going on line 2.
We are setting this variable to be the path of this directory with that not prefix, I guess that /client/source on it.
Yeah.
So that would be like a string, right?
Yeah, precisely. It's going to return a string with our source directory path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also pretty much explains number 3. So I'm not going to ask about that. This is our actually, I'll ask you though. What is our dist directory? What's that referring to?
Forgot.
That's fine. Anyone else remember what dist refers to?
Oh, public. Sorry, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just another common term for public or distribution. So what does that mean?
It's where your index.html lives and your index.js.
Yeah, precisely. It's, in other words, it's like where our output code is. This is the result of all of our Webpack bundling. We want this to go there. And if you remember from earlier, our node server is serving up all of these files. So that's the recursive dist directory. Okay, so we got Sunny. Alicia, what's going on line 5?
Hold on, let me see. We are putting where the entry level or the entry point for the server is going to be. Oh, module.exports. We're setting up the object to be able to share it with other files.
Yes, precisely. This object, the purpose of it is it's just a configuration object. And what we're doing is precisely right. We are making whatever things we define, however we set up our configuration, we're making this object accessible to other files. So that's what's going on here. Okay. Alan, you're up next. Tell me about line 6.
It sets the entry property, and then it calls the index.jsx file from the source directory.
Precisely. It finds the path of source directory, and then it also adds the index.jsx, which from earlier is where we wrote our highest level React component, and also we included our React DOM.render there. Now, just a quick note, I want to come back to that actually. There's different philosophy on if you want your React DOM.render to be in your highest level component. Probably not if you're building kind of like an enterprise level app or like a real company app. You probably want to separate that just to eliminate errors. But for the most part, I don't build any gigantic apps. Just having with tons and tons of specialized components, just having React DOM.render in the same as the parent component app is probably fine. But I think that if you do decide to move that React DOM.render to a different file, this is the file that should be pointing to. Okay, so that was who was it who just spoke? Sorry, I called out. Okay, got it. So then we already did Alicia. Brady, what is going on line 7 through 10?
So we're setting up our output entry. We're calling it bundle, or we're pulling it from bundle.js for the file name, and then we are setting the directory path on line 9.
So not quite. You're pretty close though. So think about output and file name. What do those two things give you as far as clues of the purpose of these lines?
We're telling them to locate that file.
Not locate. Because think about what's the purpose of Webpack, right?
We're making it available.
Not even available. Okay, so what's the input of Webpack is React files. What is the output?
I mean, the output's the bundle.js, right?
Yeah, there we go. You got it. So this is saying, okay, take a look at the destination directory or the distribution directory, the folder. Do all of our webpacking and call that file bundle.js and put it in the distribution folder. So that's what's going on. All right. Nice
Can you
work.
repeat that? Can you like kind of summarize? So
Yeah, of course. So as we know from our entry, the source directory is where we are finding our React files. Our app.jsx is the highest level, but we import into that a bunch of different other React components. So all of our React code is our input to Webpack. Webpack does all of its packing, it does all of its bundling, combines all that React code into one large JavaScript file, which is what we discussed a little bit earlier. And it's that file we call, in this case, bundle.js. You can call it anything. You can call it index.js. You can call it Webpack's awesome, JavaScript file.js. And it'll bundle it, and it'll generate this file. And then it will put it in the dist directory folder, or it can be called public, it can be called dist. We define that on line 3. We figure out where that folder is, and we put it into that folder. And I'm gonna just really quick, let's see if has it synced? Yes, it has synced. So I'm just gonna share wait, can you all see the diagram again? Okay, yeah. So once again, React goes in, Webpack spits out bundle.js. This entire folder is served by the node server, the client. So the purpose of I'm going to move this back over here. The purpose of our output is designating, put the file in that folder. I hope that clarifies, but feel free to tell me if it doesn't. For anybody.
Is this like a standard structure for the exports object, or will this look different at times?
Can you expand on your question a little bit?
We'll always have an entry that is set to this string and an output that's set to this object, rather than like an output just being like the path or the dist underscore directory. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as far as I know, with React, that is for the most part true.
Okay.
One of the benefits of Webpack is that it is very, very flexible. What that also means is it can be very complicated and it can be hard to get up to speed and understand what's going on. But it's very flexible. You can do a lot of different things with it, including compile other things aside from React, like Angular. I think you can even compile some Backbone, but don't quote me on that. But my understanding, at least the way I've used React, it's pretty much this. Index.jsx is the entry, the output is the dist folder.
Okay.
But there are a lot of different ways to serve as well. There's a lot of different ways to serve. There might be decisions that don't even require. There are ways to do it without Webpack at all. So I don't want to give you a yes, this is like how everybody does it, but Alan has a great comment. He says, yes, super standard, best practice.
So this pattern you're seeing, Sonny, is pretty much like, even if you use a generator, there's a few Webpack generators out there. It's more or less the same thing.
Okay.
Like your wording might be different, but when you actually sit back and look at like the comparisons of the code, they all more or less do the same thing.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Brady was the last person I called on. So Charlene, this one's pretty tough. So I'm going to give you I'm going to tell you a little bit what's going on up here, and then and then I'll ask you to explain what this is. So module, in this case, there's only one module in this particular Webpack config because it's pretty simple. And module, you can give it a couple arguments, a couple different configuration options, basically. And there are also different loaders. Loaders is pretty much exactly what it sounds. It's something that will it'll take a certain action based on a certain input, and it takes an array of rules. So what is kind of break down this line 14? What do you think this rule means? Take your best guess.
So I think it probably would just look for this file extension to do the transpile.
Yeah, pretty much. You got it. So specifically, this test key value pair is saying, for this particular loader object, I want to apply this rule on files that end in JSX. In other words, React files. And some people you don't have to write in JSX. You can also write JavaScript or React code in JS extension files as well. And some people will have a rule that's .js or JSX. So just a fun tidbit, and you might see that in some Webpack and things. Okay, so that was Charlene, and then we have, who's next? We call him Brady. David, tell me, include source directory. We all know what that is, right? We want to search that. We want to run this test within the source directory, which we have from before. In other words, we definitely don't want this to happen in our node modules. That's a complete waste of our time. The React code is not there, or it could be, but if it is, it's being imported into our source directory already with different code. But David, can you tell me what's going on line 16? Your best guess.
It knows what the transpiler is so that it knows what to do with the React.
Precisely.
Components.
So pretty much like the Babel loader, the actual code that makes Babel happen, that transpiles it from ES6 to ES5. It says, hey, let's use all this, or let's use this Babel loader on these JSX files. So 17 and 18, 19. This one's pretty tricky. Sunny, it's back to you. Give me your best guess. What's going on 17 through 19?
Is that the? Oh man, presets. Is that the format that is transpiling? I guess that would be test, right?
No, actually, you pretty much got it right. So we're using some. I don't even know how to describe it. And Alan, Ken, please jump in. But the idea is, we're transpiling to ES 2015. Like that's the standard. And the React is, I think that's like some sort of configuration for our transpiler. Is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So that's kind of a rule.
Yes, a little bit, but ES 2015 is actually outdated now. The way Babel was doing it, they had these presets for each year, like ES 2014, 2013. What they chose to do instead is to make those yearly changes automatically update in EMD.
What's EMD? What do you mean?
EMV. So instead of ES 2015, it would be, I guess, the more modern usage is like EMV.
Okay, got it. All right. I didn't fully understand that, but I'm gonna take your word for it. This can change, but for now, ES 2015, ES 6, ES 6. So who can? So then, Alicia, can you kind of sum up to me what's going on with this rule? Tell me the play process. What do all these come together and do?
I guess it's just talking about look for the JSX files from the source directory to compile React and ES 2015 files, or to that language.
Pretty much. Look in this folder.
Or that syntax, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. Look in this folder, look for these files, use Babel loader to convert them to 2015. You got it. Perfect. Okay, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but I want to show you an example of a different Webpack file, a Webpack config, and this is the one that I kind of use most commonly. So let's Webpack config.js. Or whoops, I'll make it a bit smaller. So it's pretty similar to ours, and of course, I base it off of what I learned in Hack Reactor. But you'll notice it's a little bit different. I'm using a polyfill. Anybody know what a polyfill is? I see Kheng nodding. I'm going to ask you to jump in and explain that one, Kheng.
So when browsers, so not all browsers support all JavaScript functions at once. It's up to the browser creators to implement those functions. So polyfill is typically a package that you can load that makes it so all the browsers can use that method or function.
Yeah, pretty much. It's filling in the gaps that different browsers have, and it's just a nice piece if you're trying to use a method later. It's not super necessary, but not something that gets in the way by any means either. So that's one thing that's different. Otherwise, it's largely the same. What you'll notice here is I have a different rule, another additional rule, I should say, one for CSS. And it's pretty much exactly what we learned. Same thing with JavaScript. It's saying, or with the JSX file. It's like, okay, take a look at files with have a CSS extension, and then using the the CSS loader, compile those into. I'm actually not 100% sure how it compiles them, but compiles it's still just one bundle.js. There's no CSS file. It's just bundle.js, and somehow it's converted into JavaScript, and that JavaScript somehow is interpreted as CSS and styling on the page when it's loaded. And I'll even show you. Here's my app.jsx for this, and you'll see, is there styling in here? CSS? No, let's try contact. Well, it's not here either. Okay, weird. But normally, the way that I would have it is I would do import, CSS or I'm spelling import wrong. Some file.css, and boom, that's all I need. The styles are applied to the page. I don't need to do anything in my JSX. It's just there, which is great. So that's just one way that I write CSS. I'm probably not really going to do that anymore because there are note save. I use SCSS now, which you all can learn another day. But the compiling that is a little bit different because it uses variables, which is another thing in CSS. But that's another example of a rule, a different type of rule, and a different reason you'd need a different type of rule in your Webpack config. And then there's also dev server, which is kind of self-explanatory, specifically for Webpack development configuration. And then there's resolve, which is just kind of a nice, neat thing that way you don't have to do import, contact.jsx, you can just do import contact, and it'll automatically resolve that extension. And then what else do I have? I also have a development config. So what I do is I explicitly state hey, I want to, in my package.json, I want to run, the development version, which makes it easier to debug and makes it a little bit slower. And there's a couple different settings I have in here. And then versus I want to run the production version, which has, minifies the files, makes it harder, makes it loads faster, but also makes it harder to debug. So that's kind of the purpose of that, and some different things that you will eventually, all of you at some point need to learn how to publish React to development. Because when you go to, let's see if we can find one. So my website, for example, you will see has nice, lovely React blue icon up on the right. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's this page is using the production build of React. Check mark. I'm doing great. Amogh, he's a good developer. He doesn't make silly mistakes like that. But if we go to let's see, hover.to app, I think. Oh wait, what? No. This is one company who I have worked with, and let's see if we can log in. See if we can get the red one. No, shoot, it's not it's not popping up. But if we did log in, it would give us a red like warning sign, like you're using the development build of React, and it's just makes you look, just doesn't make you look good, doesn't make you look like you know what you're doing. So at some point, you will all have to learn how to do that, and that's important. Alan posted something interesting. Alan, you want to talk about that? Whatever you posted.
Oh, that was my rambling earlier.
Oh, okay.
About ES 2015. But yeah, it's just presets of, hey, it looks like you have 2015 ES 2015 code. Let's compile it into something more browsers can use. They used to update these presets yearly, and so you would have to go to npm and install a new package, and that was insane. So now you just install something called env. The preset's just called env, and then instead of having to update it each year, you just update your env package when like there's a new version of JavaScript. That's all.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
That was a random rambling.
Yeah. No, that's good though. It's good to know. So save that link as well, and I'm gonna post a bunch of links right now. Just about some of the many of the things we talked about. Once again, not something you like need to know super well, but just some. Why doesn't that polyfill link work? Nothing that you need to know super well, but good to look into if you're ever curious, just to quickly read through. So that's that. So I also want to. So you'll notice here that there's some interesting things in this file, right? We have Babel loader, which is where does Babel loader come from? Does anybody know? Anybody take a guess?
Is it like a node module?
Close. It's a package. It's an npm package. Which brings us to one more pretty important thing. How do we get all these node packages into our app? Where do they come from?
JSON?
Does they need to be exported somewhere?
You guys are overthinking this. How do you get the packages you need into your project folder, right? So
npm install.
Yes, precisely. And have you ever? I mean, I'll show you something, and I'm sure you all have encountered this error before. Can you see my terminal?
Yes.
Yeah? So where am I? I'm on my personal thing. Let me do npm install, Express. Oh, that worked? Hold on. No, shoot, that's not supposed to work. Let's go to my desktop. We'll try that again. What? That's not supposed to work. No, don't do that. What do we have here? Let's do npm install, what is it? Axios? Let's try that. That shouldn't work. Okay, why is this working? This should not work. Basically, if you try to, because node and npm is globally installed. Okay, thanks, Kheng. All right, I didn't realize that, but I know that I usually in the past, I'm not 100% sure what's going on, and Kheng, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong. But usually you need a package.json in your current directory in order to install node files. So in fact, I'm going to try that again just once more. And let's see if this. No, it still works. Okay. But the point is, you need a package.json. But you can install these packages. But there's one specific thing. Well, let's just jump in. Actually, let's just kind of break this down. So, we'll continue the cold calling. Who was the last person who went? Whoever admits that they were the last person, then they don't have to go again for 5 more times.
I'll go with that.
Okay, you were the last.
It's Alicia.
Yeah, it was Alicia. Okay, great. So then we have Alan, RPT 13 Alan. We're gonna tell me what's the deal with this scripts section? We can kind of ignore some of this other stuff. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But scripts, that's an important one.
Yeah, so you can use npm run followed by the script name to run that command. So for example, if you did npm run React Dev, it would run webpack/d and watch.
Yep, exactly. It's just shortcuts, makes it easy for us as developers, and also makes it really, really easy for people who are using our app. They might download it from GitHub, need to install it. Makes a lot of practical sense. Any good README in your life, if you want to either work on open source or you're working collaboratively with other developers, you want to make it as easy as possible to take your code and get it set up on another machine as easy as possible. And one really simple and effective way is to add good npm scripts that will do exactly all the different things that you need your application to do. Which in this case, we need to start our server, and we also need to run Webpack. Are there any questions on this? I'm going to count to 7 because I know we're kind of just running through things quickly.
What is the -- watch for?
Yep. Anyone else? Anyone have an answer to that?
Isn't that for Babel specifically, so that when you save make changes, you don't have to keep reloading your server. It'll just automatically make the changes on your web pages as you go. Yeah, pretty much all right, except for it being Babel specific. This is a flag or an option with the Webpack CLI, Webpack command line interface. It's saying exactly what you said, right? Like whenever there's a change, I want this command to run again. And it's not specific to Babel, partly because for the reason we just learned before, I have a CSS loader. I also want that to run every time that I make a change and hit save on my CSS files. But yes, it's just adding an option for the npm or for the Webpack CLI tool to be smart and help us develop faster.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I have a question. What's the difference between dev dependencies and just regular dependencies?
Yeah, great question. And actually, we can segue on to the. I'm gonna put a pause on that. Actually, we can talk about that next. Any other questions about this or anything we've talked about already?
So actually, one thing I want to add with the scripts is when you run Linux commands, you can chain multiple commands together with semicolon or the double ampersands. And that's where the scripts actually really shine, because sometimes to get things initialized, you might have to run 4 or 5 different commands to get it all set up correctly. You don't want to have to keep typing that out over and over again, or to go find the previous time you called it and copy and paste it. So have it in one spot. You call that single command and it does everything correctly.
Yep. That's a nice optimization too, is just really simple. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can do 2 ands, which I think means run them both at the same time. 1 and, which means run one or the other, but I could be wrong. You can look up back documentation. But yes, exactly, another good one. There's a couple of great packages. One is npm run all, which will run multiple at once. And there's another great npm package called concurrently, which I really like because if one process fails, the other ones will stop too. I use that one for automating testing, which is nice. But yeah, definitely something to look into and get versed on. Getting good at Bash will make your life so much better. So great, thanks for writing that, Kheng. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and jump ahead to the dev dependencies. There's plenty of time for questions throughout. So don't be shy about interrupting with them. So this is actually one where I'm not 100% sure. I think dev dependencies are things that you specifically need for the development of the application. So in this case, Babel core, Babel loader, Babel preset. These are all things we need for Webpack to work more or less, and Webpack itself. Whereas dependencies, we need all of this code, Express, jQuery, Mongoose, React, in order for our application to actually run. So there is a way that you can do an npm install that ignores dev dependencies. You can just have the regular dependencies you need to run your application. Might make your app a little bit smaller, which can matter, when you're scaling on like a massive level, or you don't have like tons of memory on your server, or the device you're using as your server. You can just install the bare minimum because you can install you might already have your bundle.js, for example. And these dev dependencies, in this case, their explicit purpose is building our bundle.js, where, as I said before, this is the one that does our, what was I going to say? that actually is responsible for running our application. Cool. All right. So
is there a reason why you would want or not want to have that dependency as opposed to like having just the bundle?
Is there a reason why you'd want to have deb dependencies instead of the bundle in terms of? So I think I understand your question correctly, but I could be wrong. Definitely for the explicit purpose of development, of course. As you make changes, you want the latest bundle.js. But also, if you want to generate a fresh bundle.js every time, I don't think that's bad practice by any means. And as it is, bundle.js files are like pretty big. They're like a whole megabyte or something. So that can be one reason. Like I usually do a git ignore for my bundle.js. I don't want that being committed up into my GitHub. Though the flip side is then, when you do install it, it's just one less thing you have to worry about. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. I'm going to take that silence as a yes. Okay, so
Sorry,
go ahead.
I gave a thumbs. Sorry.
Okay, got it. All right, good. Oh, sorry, I didn't have your camera on. There's limited how many faces I can see. Okay, great. All right. So we already kind of covered this. We're not going in the same order I went in last time, but that's okay. Where it's just Express guide to routing and the Express API, which we talked about. We did app.get before. But there's other things, app.post, those are the most common that you use. There's like a bunch of different options, a bunch of different ways you can use the API. There's also, put, delete, that'll listen for those requests. So this is a good thing to look at as you are developing and building routes. It's easy to just copy paste, but it's better to understand what are all the different things you can do. Especially because have any of you ever visited a site that had like a 404 and there was a message? Of course you have. That's the silly question. How do you think they achieve that? Because you can type in gibberish, right? So I can do, and then it'll take me to the same 404 no matter what gibberish I type in. The way that's accomplished is with some of these options. With some of these flexible routes, more or less. As you can see, there's different interesting things here. And I think, and Kheng, you know better than I, this is something that you'll kind of learn how to do in FEC, right?
I think actually I ran into a lot more of this with the SDC portion. Yeah, FEC routes were relatively simple, but when we got to SDC and we had to incorporate all the different paths from to our server without conflicting with everything else that we're setting up when we're scaling and so on. That's where getting to know all of these routes really well makes sense.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So you will get to do it in SDC.
A lot of it, more than you like.
Yes. But it's definitely an important part of development, especially with like massive applications, which many of you will work with in your professional lives. Or probably all of you will work with in your professional lives. So it's good to understand routing and the different things you can do. And Express is pretty nifty in that, boom, here we go, the documentation. So for sure, bookmark this one. So the API reference, I forgot why I written this down, but once again, just kind of the Express documentation. Dives into URL encoded, which we talked a little bit more about. All this stuff, it's definitely worth keeping, on hand as you work through these. And at some point, reading through a little bit of them just to kind of demystify Express and understand what's actually going on. So on that note, let's shift gears a little bit. What really is, what is a server? Like, just, we use this term all the time, but what does it really mean? Let's see, who was the next time I cold called this? Alicia went, Alan went, right? Brady went, right? No, Brady just asked the question. Brady, what's a server?
For the longest time, I had no idea what a server actually was. I hear the term. I actually work in IT, and so servers term it's thrown around a lot. But physically, it's like your laptop could be a server. You could have dedicated any kind of megabyte holding thing that holds data to be a server. But basically, it's something that runs your actual holds your databases. It runs like your software, the code that you have written, and it kind of stores information. And that's my understanding, at least for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that simple. Something that will run your software, that is your server. There's this really funny picture I saw, just a joke on the internet, but like there was a MacBook in someone's office, and there was a post-it note on top of it that says, "Do not close this MacBook. It is a server. Yes, really. Don't do it. Things will break." Which is you never want to use your own machine as a server for obvious reasons, because if that stops, then bad things will happen. So thank you, Brady. That was a great answer. Charlene, give me, what is an HTTP server? And this is a really hard one, so anyone else, please feel free to jump in and give her out.
Like serving for the HTTP purpose?
Yes, exactly. Handling HTTP requests. Even just looking at Wikipedia really quick, a web server is server software or hardware dedicated to running that can satisfy World Wide Web client requests. So all the requests that we know and love, that's just what an HTTP server is. Whereas what Brady said earlier, where we're just running software, on our own machine, that's just a local server, or a server that we don't necessarily care about HTTP requests.
Is this like one of those dedicated servers that they have out in Utah or wherever in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, pretty much. Ideally that's how you should do it. So, that's more of a philosophical question. So I'm going to get on a tangent here because I think it's interesting. So I used to work for a company that made, software for like old school enterprise customers. And one thing to note was that we offered two versions of our software. It's the same software, but one, you could buy it software as a service or cloud hosted, which is exactly, what you described. Some, data center somewhere or some server farm somewhere is running our code, and then any computer from anywhere in the world can access that server and, communicate with it. But a lot of our companies our customers were more old school, and they were like, that's just not how we do things here. It's kind of security risk. It's, that doesn't jive with us. Most of our code is running on our own machines. So they basically had their own server farms that were sitting in, office buildings or somewhere else, but, that weren't owned by Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which are kind of the big three cloud service providers that everybody knows. So they had their own machines, and that's hosted on premise, which is basically just bunch of servers all hooked up by LAN, LAN Ethernet cables, and they communicate with each other, but not necessarily making requests outside of that. So I hope that kind of answers your question. But yeah, more or less, that's yes. I cannot imagine that anybody. Well, that's not true. It's possible. The vast majority of you will probably never set up a server in person. Well, actually, Brady, you might have had to do that at your work, I'm sure, because our IT guy at my last company definitely had to do that. Where he did actually have to set up a server that lived in our office, and it was not a cloud server, just ran in our office. It ran stuff, and it was there for like some additional compute power for some of the engineers who needed something that required a lot of compute power. But the vast majority of your careers, your lives, you will just be using cloud servers or servers owned by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, etc. That you just like, hey, give me a server, and then you install your software on there, and it's done, and it's really cheap. You don't have to buy a $500 computer and install it and plug it into your wall. Cool. Okay, I think I picked on Charlene. And then what's my next question? So as we know, Express is just the library that makes node server a little bit easier to work with. What are but that's specific to Node, specific to JavaScript. What are some other types of servers that you've heard of? Other languages or other software? HTTP servers specifically.
Like different web, like in different languages.
Yeah.
Like Python and Flask, I think that's one.
Yeah, exactly. So Flask is one serving framework for Python. I think Django is more of a language, or more of a similar to Reactor as an MVC, which is not. Yeah, precisely. So Flask is one kind of really easy way to set up an HTTP server. Flask apps are pretty common. I had to build one for an interview. Any other things that you've all heard of in terms of servers?
Is Rails like Ruby on Rails? Is that server stuff?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Ruby's an MVC, which I'm pretty sure has serving part of it. So I'm confident that there's some code in Ruby that does handle the serving part, or the Rails of Rails that handles the serving part. Anyone heard of Apache? Yeah, so Apache server is another pretty common one. And it's actually pretty simple. Like live server is actually one that you've all used, where there is it's serving your HTML, CSS, or all your files, same way that the Node server is. And whenever you make an update to your code, it'll refresh the server and give you the latest results. There's like a bunch of npm packages that have like really simple HTTP server. There's one, I think there's Python simple HTTP server. I think, did I use this? No, I gotta look up the actual command. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head, but. This is Python for beginners. That's the truth, is it not? Oh, there we go. Is it flag? Okay. So before we do that, let's actually do this. Let's see, cd or mkdir folder, cd folder, nano. Let's do index.html. And then let's do I'm so bad at this. I always just use the VS Code. Alan or Kheng, correct me if I'm doing this wrong. The heck, why is it not? HTML. And then let's just do body. And then let's do hello. Body. I need to close the HTML tag, right? Okay. Thanks. And then I think that's all I need. So if I Control X, save, and Nano, for those of you familiar, is just a really simple text editor that exists in your Bash terminal. So then let's do simple. Where's the? There we go. Oh, my computer's slowing down. This is not good. Get a computer with more than 4 gigs of RAM for your next purchase if you don't have one already. So let's do this. The no such file or directory. What? Or no, I didn't copy it quickly. My bad. I want to copy this. Copy. I think it worked. Let's go to localhost 8,000. Yeah, there we go. You can see that. The request was made up at the top. And here we go. We have hello, which is what I typed earlier. So it's the HTTP servers are living in your browser as well. It's as simple as that, which is awesome. So Node Express seems really complicated, but it's just as simple as this. So now you know there's a bunch of different ways you can do things, and you're not restricted to Node, especially for things like this. If you just want to quickly serve something, it can be a pretty nifty tool to have this Python command. So I'll just copy paste it in the chat just for fun. And yeah, cool. So now we're just diving a little bit more into servers, just so you understand like what are we actually doing. Okay, so we talked about body parser. We didn't go really deep into it, but here's an article if you want to understand kind of how it works, which was a question from earlier. I think there was also Webpack tutorial on understanding how it works. This is another link I wanted to share with you all. Once again, just two rabbit holes. Don't go too deep into them, but some additional reading, which I think might be helpful if you are curious, you want to dig in a bit deeper. So let's. I'm trying to decide if I want to blow your minds as like the last thing, or do it. It makes more sense to do it now, but no, we're going to save it as the last thing. The blowing of minds. Okay, so now we've more or less covered the kind of all the pieces. We covered Express, Node, we covered Webpack, we covered React. We understand now how they're going to fit together. So let's do this again, where we draw the diagram. But now you're all pros, so it's going to be pretty easy and this will be a piece of cake. Share, and how do I exit full screen? There we go. Exit full screen, and you all can see the squiggle that I'm drawing.
Yes.
Okay, great, wonderful. So now, same thing as last time. Everyone, just shout out. Tell me what you want to do, what you want me to draw, and I'll draw it.
Server and client.
Yes. Let's mix it up. Let's put the client on this side. We'll put the server over here. Come on, everybody. Don't make me round robin call on you.
React and the client.
Right. So we have a React client.
I like the React logo. Good.
Thank you. I'm kind of messing it up.
Impressive.
I gotta like turn my tablet over. There we go. That's pretty good. That's not my best one, but we'll move with it.
MongoDB.
Yep.
You have Node and Express.
Yes. So we have our machine, which is our Node server, which also includes Express.
The distribution folder or public.
So yeah, let's just have this be like a big green box. So I could start round robining if we want to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. And the distribution would be the index.html, and then the oh my gosh, the bundle.js.
Yep. Bundle.js. Yes. Where does that bundle.js come from? Anybody can answer.
Webpack.
Yeah, it's compiled by Webpack. Let's use red for Webpack. And what are some things that Webpack uses to compile, specifically with our use case?
JSX.
Well, what npm packages? Let me clarify a little bit.
Babel.
Yep. And in fact, can we start filling in what are some npm packages we've used in each of these steps? Because I think that's kind of important. So like, what are some things we use in Node? What are some things we use in Webpack?
For Express, we use like body parser.
Yep. Body parser. One more we used.
Path.
Yeah, exactly. Path. All right, Webpack. There's kind of three critical ones. We've got Babel. And I didn't go into it as much with you all as I did with RPT 11, but I mean, you guys all you can cheat. You can take a look at your you can take a look at your full stack review repos and the dependencies.
I don't know if this hasn't been mentioned yet, but the React router and the React router DOM.
Yeah, well, we can write that part in. So no, I'm getting too fancy here. I can't draw. JSX files, we'll call it. Which underneath here we have, yep, React router and React router DOM. Those are two pretty critical ones. And we didn't really cover this, so I'll give this to you all. But we also do need with the Webpack npm package as well. And depending on your configuration, you might need, you probably need, you don't really need Webpack CLI, but you might need, Webpack presets. I can't. Preset 2015, which for us that just magically appeared, but if you ever build it from scratch, you will probably need to npm install something like that. Cool. So we're pretty much done here, but there's a few connection things that are missing. Because right now, most of these are just floating bodies, except for Webpack and Bundle.js. Alan, you said two more. Were there any that I was missing?
No, I was going to say the Webpack preset. If you're going to use React, you have to download the React preset and also another just JavaScript preset. Either ES 2015, ENV, whatever you choose to use.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few different options, but you definitely need one of those.
Where does, because I haven't gotten very far for this full stack, where does Mongoose fall into that with the MongoDB?
Yeah. So what define Mongoose? What is it to you?
I guess it's almost, I mean, I'm not very sure because I've never used it, but it seems like it's almost like a translator in a sense that helps communicate in a consistent way?
Yeah, pretty much. Translator's a good kind of metaphor for it. The term is ORM. Alan or Kang, do you know what ORM stands for? I never really remember.
Something like object relational management, something.
Model, I think.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's the word.
Okay. And precisely, it translates something into queries to the database. So what does it translate into queries, Alicia?
Your objects that you set up in Mongo?
Pretty much. What language? Because we're not using SQL, we're not using the Mongo query language.
Oh, JavaScript?
Yeah, exactly. So we are translating our JS commands into Mongo queries.
Okay, thanks.
And what are we getting back?
Objects?
Yeah, objects, data. It's basically translated back into JavaScript for the most part. So data back into JS. But that's specifically if you're using Mongoose or another ORM. If you are not using that, then you have to do some things differently. Cool. So we connected our server to our database. What else do we need to connect? There are 2 arrows that we are missing.
The client to the distribution files?
Yeah. It has to somehow get over there. But how does it get over there? It doesn't happen automatically.
Through.
Someone else can answer. Thank you for volunteering, Alicia. What sends the distribution folder to the client?
You're talking about the static files? On the Express side, serving the static files?
Yes, precisely. Express, or Node in its raw form, is serving our static files to the client. And our client is interacting with the JavaScript and the HTML here to make lovely, lovely code and websites. Cool. One arrow that we are missing.
The client back?
Well, actually, yes, I do want to touch on that later, but even simpler. I mean, I'll just give it to you guys. This is no, you guys, the JavaScript files go into Webpack. I don't have to torture you to get you to do that. It's fine. You understand. I'm not worried. So basically, yes, this is the client server. This is monolithic architecture in its simplest form. What does monolithic architecture mean? It's basically just here, all the pieces that make our application are available together simply. You don't have to draw a bunch of different servers interacting with each other. Everything's just kind of on one page. As you move into SDC and FEC, you will not be using monolithic architecture anymore. Things will get a lot more complicated, but also a lot more fun. But this is kind of the simplest, basic way we've been doing things pretty much for the first, all of Hack Reactor so far, the first half. So great job to all of you. We're almost done. Great job to all of you Because as much as I, stood up here and lectured, I forced all of you to break it down, take your best guesses as to what was going on, and understand it. So we are here as guides, but you were the ones who figured this all out. So give yourselves a pat on the back. I really awkwardly asked RBT 11 to clap, and then I was the only one who was unmuted, so it was just me awkwardly clapping. But the sentiment is the same. You all did this. We were just here to guide you. So yes, thank you, Ken. Golf claps. So great job, seriously. And the more and more you do this, the more you work on the sprint, it'll keep coming together, and soon you'll be able to give this presentation like a pro.
Can you start from the beginning?
I have a
I just dropped in.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This might be jumping ahead, but I think McGee told us to attend like some of the SDC presentations.
Uh-huh.
You guys were talking a lot about like EC2. Like, how does that fall into like this model, and what does it do exactly?
Yeah, precisely. So EC2 is basically what we talked about earlier. It is a server. It's just Amazon's marketing term or name for a server. Elastic Cloud Compute, I think, is what EC2 stands for. So it's ECC, EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute. And it's kind of the same way. There's a certain amount of virtualization going on, so it's not as much literal like boxes of servers that you're like, okay, I want one EC2 instance, and then you get one box. It's a virtualized computing environment, which not a wormhole we're going to get into right now. But basically, what you do is you say EC2, Amazon, give me a server, and I'm going to run my code on it, and that's what an EC2 is.
Cool, thanks.
Cool. All right, so I promised you all some fun stuff before we finished. We're talking about body parts here. Okay, so there's a couple last things. So Alicia, you touched on routing a little bit, and that's an important part of this diagram. And I think that the ones that are pretty obvious, like the ones we talked about before, where we have API, GitHub repo, that's really obvious. That makes sense. So what's a little bit less obvious and kind of a big conceptual jump that I didn't even really understand until I got in the real world is there's one route that is the most important route in any kind of monolithic architecture application that you build. And it's you don't even think about it, like that's how basic it is, but it's just so important. So you all can see my bash terminal right here. Okay, who knows what the curl command is or what it does?
It calls the URL.
Yes, curl. So there's a couple options for it, but what else? Let's dive into that a little bit more. What does curl? What's another term that we use for it? Like what is it doing? What's that term for it? Makes what? And actually, here's an analogous question. What happens when we type a URL into the browser?
It's a request?
Yes, it makes a request. So curl is doing the same thing. Now, when we type this into our browser, we get a web page. Great, nothing new. We've been doing that since we were kids. But what's interesting is we'll see the data. It's the same data, but we will see the data a little bit differently when we do this. So my first question is, what route are we making this request to on Google server somewhere is listening?
//
Yes, the home route. Because if we did google.com/maps, that would be a different route. But just for now, we're making just the home route for google.com and pretend that Google is like our backend server. Just pretend that's the case. We get an interesting response. A bunch of gibberish.
Matrix.
Actually, question for the SEIRs in the room. Does anybody know how to pretty print with curl? I know there's a way.
Yeah, mine's like automatically doing it. If it's an extension.
Is it I, like -I? I don't know.
Let's try this again. Is it after? No. maybe let's try before. No, okay, that doesn't work. But does this, regardless, does this look familiar to you all? Does any of this text seem like anything you've ever seen before in your time at Hack Reactor? There's some interesting words here.
It's literally what we just went over.
Well,
what file? What specific file is this serving up?
what's the data type?
The window.
No.
Starts with an I.
Index HTML.
Yeah.
Precisely. So when we make a GET request to the root route of any server, well, not any server, but like a server, what it's returning is just returning a gigantic string of HTML, as well as, in this case, JavaScript, and probably some CSS. So when we make a GET request, the response is not, some random data. It's just the HTML. It's our distribution folder. And when we did the, app.use, public whatever something, that's exactly what we're doing. We're setting up the app.get route. We're setting it up. It's the most important route for any monolithic application. It's the one we don't even think about because it's just a part of our everyday development. Your minds are way less blown than the other students I've shown.
It may have to do with time zone. I don't know.
But the idea being that, like, the same way, accessing a website is just a GET request. It's just something that you set up on your server, just like anything else. All right, you're all really killing my buzz here. You're not. Whoa. You're not like, whoa! I understand how websites work. I understand that all HTML is basically just a giant string, and there's an engine in our Chrome browser that parses it. Understanding. Okay. I'm not gonna get more golf claps. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're almost done here. I want to show you. This is something I made when I was a student. It was just it's not like an amazing example of, or shoot, that link did not work. It's not like an amazing example of, client server architecture, but it's something I made when I was a student, and I'll share my screen again. Just something I made to impress recruiters, basically, but also just good to like talk. And I made this when so we used to have this thing called Greenfield, which was the alternative to SDC FEC, where basically we just built an app and a team. And it's exactly this. In this case, I have my routes more defined. I have my client, I have my server. And you'll notice, I'm not really including Webpack or the raw JavaScript React files. That's just not normally a part of client-server architecture. But basically, these are the kind of things that you would include if you're trying to draw an architecture diagram for someone else and you're not as interested as we are in breaking down, React and Webpack. But this is kind of the main components. And as you can see, there's a couple external APIs that my server is making requests to as well, which in this particular application were important. So just posting as a link, just, as a resource. And I also wanted to show you kind of a real world example well, let me not share my whole screen because I'm going to show some private stuff. Here we go. Let's see this diagram. So this is an architecture diagram I actually had to write at work when I had to pitch my application to the engineering team. And I was like, hey, please host my application. Here's how it works. And as you can notice, it's pretty similar to the last one. I didn't include Webpack. I didn't include, the raw React. All I had was a user authenticating through Okta, and then they access the React client. Then from there, the React client communicates with Amazon EC2 instance, just a server living in the cloud. And certain data is passed back and forth, just some requests and response that I abstracted out. No point in really saying, get so-and-so, post so-and-so. And then similarly, this node server, it's a testing application, so it spins up its own headless Chrome browser. And then it also interacts with a few external API endpoints. So, what we wrote today, we wrote in order to help and explain everything, but we also wrote it with the purpose of, you will have to write one probably at some point in your career to, in my case, it was to pitch to other, engineers, but it might just be, planning out your app, working with other engineers, developing. There'll be a purpose for this. So yeah, just wanted to share a real world example. Okay, so that is everything that I have in terms of content. So yeah, I'll open up to questions, and if anyone needs to take off, that's totally fine. We've run pretty long, but yeah, just ask questions. There's 4 SEIRs in the room. We'll probably be able to cover all the answers.
This is kind of basic, but where do the images live, like on a website, like in that diagram that you made? Where would those live?
Anybody want to take that one?
My guess would be the public folder.
All right, I'll take that one. So they can live in the public folder. There's a Webpack module to compile images too, actually, which is pretty useful. And basically, all it'll do is it'll copy your image from wherever in your folder to the distribution file, and it'll give it a random name. So that is one way you can do it. And in fact, I'm lazy, and sometimes I just do that. I just put my images right in the distribution folder. And actually, here's something pretty interesting with Chrome debugging tools, right? So let's just take a look at open up Chrome DevTools, you take a look at sources, and you can see, oh, look at this. Here's actually all the files that are being served by the server. Specifically, and here's some other sources from different code. But like, here's my routes image, which is the one we were looking at. Here's the other one that I was using. And here's my README folder, which is it looks like an HTML, almost like an iframe. But this is where all that content came from. So these assets are being served up the same way as the raw HTML that puts it all together is. And another alternative is a lot of people will host their images elsewhere. And this is usually one big reason is because you don't want to have a gigantic server serving all those files, but also because you can speed them up by having third-party resources like a CDN, which I forget what CDN stands for, but they're usually better. They serve files faster than you normally would as your web server. Yeah, content delivery network. There we go.
Cool. Thank you.
So I like to add actually, the reason why content delivery networks can serve things faster is because these companies that host them have servers all over the world, and the closer a server is to you, the faster you can get the images. So you upload it to Akamai is one of those companies, and they take that one copy of your image and spread it out all over the world to all their servers, so that anyone that needs that image pings the closest server and gets that image.
That's cool.
Have you had the lecture by Fred where he goes over how the internet works?
That huge diagram.
Yeah, there's
Recently
a real
we
topic.
had that. It was.
They repost, because I remember it was in the, sorry to interrupt you, Kang, but I remember we go over it earlier in the course, but they just started recently posting it again. I believe it's an FEC, so even like interviewing now, like I've watched that thing a few times. I mean, that's the only video I've known that's been posted twice in 2 different sections. So I definitely think it's pretty much everything Amogh's been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But way more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, at a higher level, more detail on the higher level, but I think all the stuff that Amogh covered really talks about how it actually codes, how the code actually runs, which is a different level of detail. Both very helpful.
You recorded this, didn't you, Amogh?
Yep.
Excellent.
Did somebody actually click record somewhere? It just started.
I saw the. Oh yeah.
No, the room does it automatically, but I have no idea how we're going to get a copy of this recording.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can give it again. It's not a big deal.
CDN.
I thought when I logged in, it had recording up there.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does. It's still recording right now. This is McGee gave us this room. It's she said it was a auto record room, but none of us knows what that means. So we're just like, okay, it's the recording light's on.
It wasn't recording when we first got here.
It's like the security room.
Exactly. All right, more questions. Got lots of us here. Take advantage of it. Countdown.
All right. I wanted to say thank you to everyone. I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you, Mo, and all the SEIRs. This was super helpful.
So helpful and valuable.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is really fun for us too. Once again, countdown for 7 for final questions, and anyone can leave at any time if they need to. Ryan left. All right, no more questions. We're good. We're done. Everybody, hope you learned something. If you need more clarification, book office hours with any SEIR. We all got this in the bag. So, thanks for coming. Hope you had fun.
Thanks for hosting this.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
I guess if we just leave the room, the recording will save somewhere.
I hope. That's my assumption.
Yeah, probably. All right.
That was amazing. Thank you for holding that, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's like I said before. It's just, I think there's just a couple too many gaps in this part of the program. I really think they need to add some sort of lecture like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was great. All right. Have a nice night.
Yeah, you too. All right. Bye,
See you
Alan.
tomorrow.
Yep. Bye.